Okay, let's now turn our attention to some of the key players that we need to keep an eye on. Offensively, we'll start right there. You just mentioned Kevin Jennings. Of course, the big losses on offense, you lose Brashard Smith at running back and the top two wide receivers. Other than that, Jennings is back, Maryland is back at tight end, and the offensive line is going to be strong again. So tell me a little bit about what they were able to bring in. What makes you mention some of the players that were replacing some of the key guys that have gone. So talk about some of the players, the skill position players that the new guys that you think we should be keeping an eye on, or the holdovers.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up RJ Maryland, and he is still recovering from a torn ACL suffered against Stanford last year. I think he's going to play early in the season. The amount of snaps that he plays, that'll be something to certainly keep an eye on, as SMU doesn't want to have him, be overloaded and pushed over the top, to put it that way, early on, because they also have Matthew Hibner, who was a really big breakout and key contributor for them once Maryland went down at tight end. And you have those two guys. There's a lot of thought in that SMU building that they have one of the best tight end rooms in college football. But, I mean, in terms of the two starters, those are two really, really strong pieces. And then they brought in Yamir Knight from James Madison, who, I'll tell you, Texas Tech was after him. And we know the type of push that Texas Tech made on transfers this offseason. And SMU was able to come away with him. They really felt strongly he was the answer to their punt return needs and also their slot their slot receiver needs, because they did lose Roderick Daniels Jr., who was just electric. I believe he finished as the leading receiver off last year's roster, and he was kind of a do-it-all guy. Yamir has really shown a lot of that in fall camp so far. He looks dynamic. He looks like he's going to be a fun target for Kevin Jennings to have. And then the question is, does Jordan Hudson and Romello Brinson, the two outside receivers that are back, do they really give Kevin that go-to receiver on the outside like they have at times, but not necessarily consistently enough over the course of last season? You mentioned Brashard Smith. Looks like he's doing great with the Kansas City Chiefs already. SMU is probably not going to be able to replace him as a one-to-one type of replacement. Mm-hmm. They're going to need their running back room to step up as a whole. The good thing is they have Derek McFall, who's a redshirt freshman, who has shown a lot of the flashes that Brashard Smith kind of has shown. He can catch the ball. He's comfortable at receiver. He can run the ball. He's explosive. And then they add in another explosive back in Chris Johnson Jr., who's like a 10-2 100-meter guy. They have a big back in TJ Harden, who led UCLA in rushing last year. And then they've got a 4-star true freshman in Dramico Green, who looks talented. So they have a bunch of options there. If they can get 1 to 2 to really pan out with a strong offensive line, like you mentioned, I think they'll be all right, and they'll give the balance that Kevin Jennings needs for this offense as well.
Speaking of Dramico Green, him being a true freshman, are there any other true freshmen, or of course, sticking on offense, is there a true freshman on offense that you think could be a contributor?
Yeah, actually, there's a really intriguing one, and SMU signed a couple of blue chip wide receivers out of high school, and actually both enrolled early. But I'll tell you, Isaiah Robertson is the sleeper out of that group of 4 wide receivers they signed, and he came in this summer, and all he's done is just absolutely wowed. He's physically ready, mentally and maturity-wise. The coaches have raved about him, and he's just made plays all over the field. So I think he's somebody that you could certainly see SMU rolling out there as somebody as a first off the bench option.
Okay.
And he would have most certainly earned it. He's not I think he ended up being one of the lowly rated guys, but I tell you, I pushed for him to the rankings team. I said, guys, he's a football player, wide receiver, running back, quarterback, punt returner, kick returner, linebacker, safety is what he played for Arlington High School. And he was just really good at everything he tried. And that means something. It doesn't help you pad the stats that sometimes you need to get noticed, but you need to be tough at the next level, especially at the Power 4, to play. And he's shown that over the course of fall camp. So a little bit of a sleeper pick there, but I like my chances.
And one more on offense. Can you give me actually, let me hold that to the end. Lastly, I did want to ask you about Tyler Van Dyke before we move over to the defense. From the outside, point of view, it's like, well, why does Tyler Van Dyke go to a team where he's clearly the backup? This is a good deal for SMU to have a veteran backup in case something happens to Jennings. Were you surprised? Was there a specific reason? Was it just a relationship with Lashley?
Yeah, this was really interesting, actually, how this came about. I think Tyler, his recovery isn't where he necessarily wants it to be, and I don't think it's any other fault than just kind of what happened with the injury. You know, not all ACLs are torn equally or whatever, and so for Tyler, he's got this 1 year. This is his one shot that he has, and he redshirted last year after the injury, and this year he can medically redshirt if he doesn't play a single game.
That's true.
And so if he, which I just seen him walk around campus and throw in practice, he's not ready, and he's not like he'd be the backup late in the year, maybe, and that would. I think that would be a really difficult conversation for them to have, because Tyler wants to go to the NFL and give it his best go. And so he can recover with people he's comfortable with, that they know they aren't going to mess with him in a way that's, doesn't help him achieve his ultimate goal. He knows the offense. He can be a veteran. And if his recovery, truthfully, doesn't go the way it ultimately needs to, one day it wouldn't shock me if he's on staff at SMU or, and doing that. But if Kevin Jennings has a great year and he goes pro, then enter Tyler Van Dyke as your 1 year stopgap, while 4-star freshman or future redshirt freshman, I guess maybe, Ty Hawkins gets a chance to sit, which would set him up for a very similar trajectory like Kevin Jennings did over the course of his career. So kind of chestnut checkers there.
All right. No, it sounds makes a lot of sense. All right. On defense, then, let's talk there about key guys that are going to be the ones to look out for, either holdovers or incoming transfers.
Yeah, the key defensive players that I really like are Isaiah Wacobia and Ahmad Moses, the 2 star safeties back there for SMU. They're 2 of the highest rated on PFF, if you're into PFF, and they are just playmakers. They're both physical. They cover. They hit. They pick the ball off. They score touchdowns. I mean, they are special to watch. They're both from Dallas. This is their final year. They were outstanding last year for SMU. I expect huge things from them on the back end of the secondary. And then I look at a guy who's waited his turn in today's day and age of college football, where Alex Kilgore, a linebacker who signed out of high school in the first class for Rhett Lashley, goes and comes in and starts his first football game at SMU as a true freshman. And then over the course of time, 2 transfers that were brought in, they sit there ahead of him. They start, they play, they do all of those things. And he ends up getting what amounts to starter snaps, like a co-starter. They had a 3-headed monster of starting linebackers, basically. But Alexander Kilgore was the one who really had to wait his turn. This is his year to start, and he's got to be the guy and be the most productive linebacker they have, because they've got a bunch of new faces around him. But he is really mature. This is not his final year. This is his junior year. So he's looking to lay the foundation for what would be an unreal senior year. But he is somebody to really keep an eye on. And then I think 2 newcomers that I like a lot are Jeffrey Emba and Terry Webb. They're 2 big defensive tackles. SMU needed to replace its entire interior defensive line off of last year's team. And those 2 were brought in as transfers, and they look like they're going to have special seasons. 166, 320, The other one's like 6'2", 330, so kind of a little bit more of a sawed-off plug there with Terry Webb being 6'2", but Jeffrey is a first off the bus type of guy from France. So a really intriguing duo there in the middle of that defense.
Okay, and then I want to wrap up by giving me, and you might have already named a player as we went through this, but give me a breakout player on both sides of the ball. Somebody that is going to take a big step, not a transfer, not a freshman, but somebody that's a holdover that's going to do much better things than he's done so far in his career, starting on defense.
Yeah, on defense, I am going to go with, let me go with Deuce Harmon. He is a former transfer from Texas A&M, four-star prospect who had some growing pains last year. And I think from what I've heard and what I've seen, he's really put it together a little bit from a mental aspect. He's hard on himself. He takes it much more seriously than he did last year. And I think he puts together a much better 2025 campaign than he did last year, starting at one of the corner spots.
Okay.
And on offense, I'll go with Derek McFall. He redshirted last year. He showed some flashes. He is dynamic. He's a great kid. He knows what he's doing. I think this is his time. He becomes a household name for the next few years for SMU fans.
Excellent, Billy. I appreciate it. We are going to wrap this up, and I want to let everybody know that you can also check out our coverage on Ole Miss with Billy, because that's what we're going to be doing next. We're going to talk about Ole Miss. Billy does a great job, of course, with both programs covering the SMU Mustangs and the Ole Miss Rebels. But for SMU fans, we have links in the description where you can follow Billy and his coverage for SMU all season long on the ponyexpress.com. So again, Billy, thanks a bunch, and I look forward to talking some SMU football with you during the season if you get a chance.
Can't wait. Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
You got it.